friends, welcome to this new video on the daily news analysis by Daily Shots. And in this video today we are going to decipher some of the relevant topics on UPSC perspective from the pages of editorial Oped International Economy from The Hindu. Come, let's go into the session. Pandemic and panic. This editorial section of the paper describes Tamil Nadu government's intensified order of complete lockdown in few cities from April 26. So this had become a counterproductive action as panic buying had increased, which had led to anxiety over the access of the essential goods. So this can be restricted by the feasible actions by the government, like providing the essential goods at the doorsteps or at the walkable distances, and providing the articles on the basis of no mask no service rule, and also expanding the permit system for the delivery agents so that they can provide the goods at the doorsteps. Roll back the distrust, remember the core values. What does this article speaks about? So this article emphasizes a sound mental mind and a social peace is the prerequisite for any progress or development in any of the country. So basically this article describes the effect of the Tablighi Jamaat congregation which was held in New Delhi, and its effect which had created in a few sections of the society. So the expressions of hostility and downright hatred from one section to the other section of the society, and also debates and contestation on fellow citizens and treating them as enemies or undesirable creatures. So this also created situations where the civil servants urged the respective chief ministers to instruct all public functionaries to be particularly vigilant to prevent any social boycott of a particular community in the state. So basically we need to understand the plurality of our society and its diversity is an existential reality. So it means that the plural nature of our society and its diverse nature is the present reality. So this goes by the saying of Swami Vivekananda's advocacy of religious pluralism to his vision of India being the junction of two great systems, Hinduism and Islam, having a Vedantic brain and Islamic body. And besides this also makes us to remind of one of the intercommunal unity appeal which was made in October 1923 by a group of the Indians led by the renowned people like Lala Lajpat Rai, Mufti Khiyatullah, Swami Shraddhananda and Maulana Azad, along with Kasturiba Gandhi and 95 others. So this has to be reminded in this time. And basically the human relations are fragile, and it requires constant nursing and nurturing. So it is going to be the same, and it holds the same for the societal relationship. So the social peace and the sanity of the mind is the present need of the hour and is a prerequisite for the progress and development. This article is given by the former Vice President Hamid Ansari. At the edge of new nuclear arms race. This article talks about the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which is a multilateral treaty which bans the nuclear explosion tests for both civilian and military purposes. So this was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in the year 1996 on September 10th, but did not come into force as 8 specific nations have not ratified it. So this article states that from the US reports of adherence to and compliance with arms control, non-proliferation and disarmament agreements and commitments compliance report. As per this report, China is conducting a nuclear test at Lopner site as it's a violation of this Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and along with that Russia is also breaching the CTBT treaty, which is inconsistent with the zero-use CTBT. So the Cold War between these states marks the demise of these treaty, which came into effect in 1996, but still have not got into force. So there was a partial test ban treaty which was concluded in 1963, banning the underwater and the atmospheric tests but this only drove testing underground. So the CTBT negotiation starts at Geneva in the year 1994, but thereon the politics had changed and the USSR testing site was at Kazakhstan. So the complete shutdown or moratorium was concluded by Russia in the year 1991, following by the US in the year 1992. By this time, the US had conducted 1054 tests along with Russia with 715 tests. France and US were also toying the idea of CTBT, like permitting the test below 500 tons, which is with the lower thresholds of the TNT equivalents of 1/13th of the bomb, naming the Little Boy, which the US dropped on Hiroshima on August 5th, 1945. So basically, it's an explosive which is an yielding estimate of 15,000 tons of TNT. So a complete shutdown was welcomed by the non-nuclear states, but it was unwelcomed to the nuclear weapon states. So US gave thought of giving a new definition of this comprehensive test ban as a zero-yield test ban that would prohibit supercritical hydronuclear test but not subcritical hydrodynamic nuclear test. So the CTBT is prohibiting all parties from carrying out any nuclear weapon tests, explosions, or any other nuclear explosions. But basically, these terms are not neither defined nor elaborated. So basically, the question arises why the test ban treaty is not authoritative. So here enters the controversy in the Article 14 of this treaty, which is entry into force of this treaty. When India's proposal in anchoring the CTBT in a disarmament framework didn't find acceptance between the signing and the ratifying countries in the June 1996, India had withdrawn its place from the treaty. So UK, China, and Pakistan thought of revising the entry into force provision, listing 44 countries, including India. So 35 countries ratified the treaty, which means they have formally given consent for this treaty, and the countries like China, Egypt, Iran, Israel, and the US signed but not ratified. North Korea, India, and Pakistan had not signed the treaty at all. So all undertaken tests after 1996 were India and Pakistan in May 1998, and North Korea's 6 times test conducted between 2006 and 2017. So the CTBT had therefore did not find place to get into force and lacks the legal authority. So the international organization was formed on this basis to get into force of this treaty at Vienna to verify the CTBT. The treaty is in power. So they constituted 230 persons with an annual budget of $130 million, where in INE the United States of America contributed $17 million as and took part as a contributor. So this CTBT organization builds a verification system with 325 seismic, radionuclide, infrasound, and hydroacoustic. That means which is underwater systems, which are monitoring systems in the monitoring stations. So these are used to check and verify the signed and the ratified countries. So the Russia and China are increasing their reliance on the nuclear weapons. So the US on its part expands the role of its nuclear weapons. Presently, in Trump's administration, 30-year modernization plan had been devised for the nuclear weapons and the arsenals, with a price tag of $1.2 trillion, and an yearly increase of this amount is also considered. Russia and China is concerned about the US, United States missile defense and conventional global precision striking capabilities. So because of this anxiety, the Russia is exploring on the hypersonic delivery systems and Tejas systems. Besides, China is also embarking on the arsenals and the cyber capabilities. So the new strategic arms reduction treaty, which is known as New START, which is a treaty between the USSR, that is the Russia and Russian Federation and the United States, which is a treaty where the number of strategic nuclear missile launches will be reduced by half in number. So the treaty basically gives a provision where the number of strategic nuclear missile launches will be reduced by half. So this is a treaty between Russia and US. So this limits the country's arsenal, but will expire but this treaty will get expired in the year 2021. But there is no plan for this present administration to extend this treaty. So the US-China talks also had failed, as China points out the US and Russia's connection on around still accounts for about 90% of the global nuclear arsenals. So the present trends shows that the demise of the CTBT and the treaties force will not be into force because of this issue. Protecting the poor from becoming poorer. This article explains the need for the governments to prepare and devise a long-term strategic plan in the view of mitigating the healthcare and economic effects of COVID-19 rather than focusing on mid-term schemes. So the vulnerable section of the population with the low income distribution is mostly affected by this catastrophic incident, and its control measures of the COVID will affect the health, human capital and income of the vulnerable populations in multiple ways in short and long term. So for an example, the Spanish flu, which occurred in 1918, had made India to lose 18 million lives, or 6% of the population. So economically vulnerable people are the pointed out strata of the society whose nutrition are in poor levels, which contributes to their lower immunity, and also they live in crowded spaces, so it's a breeding ground for the disease. So along with this, the inadequate access to safe water, sanitation and quality healthcare causes the economic losses. So a study was conducted by Douglas Allman on the long-term effects of the Spanish flu. In his study, the long-term effects of in utero influenza exposure in the post-1940 US population, he found out that the infected mother's child is 15% likely to less likely to get graduated from the high school, and the man of the society gets 5 to 9% lower wages. Along with that, the disability rate of the children is 20% higher. So along with that, the CMI, that is the Center for Monitoring the Indian Economy, a private institution, provides a survey that 44% of the households lose their income, and according to National Council of Applied Economic Research in Delhi, 84% of loss of income, and along with that, shortage of food, medicine and fuel, around 30%. So the children experiencing a poor nutrition, the mothers in their pregnant stage, and the earlier affection of the cognitive and the educational achievements are the effects of these pandemics or the epidemics which is occurring or which had occurred. So the short-term measures also depends on the reach of the welfare schemes rendered by the state and the central governments. So it majorly depends on the reach of the welfare schemes provided by the respective governments. So in order to be effective and a long-term effective method strategy should be devised as per the author's view, which is intended to cover the current welfare schemes to the specific groups like the children, the poor children, the malnourished nourished children, along with the pregnant women and poor women of the society. Let's ours go to begin from a lab. This article provides us the solution for this question as to from where this virus had originated. So what does this evidence tells us? On Jan 26 article in Washington Times states it's a result of biological warfare which has gone wrong, where a person from Israel who is misinformed and forwarded the misinformation of the virus being transmitted from the Wuhan's virology lab. And the March 17th Columbia University uh, proof shows that it is not a engineered one. So basically the virus is showing a sequence of 96% identical genome to that of a bat's coronavirus. So the manipulation of SARS-CoV-2 from SARS-CoV, which is the predecessor of SARS-CoV-2, is improbable, which means it's not possible. But there are two possibilities as per the scientists' view. One, the natural selection in an animal host before zoonotic transfer, and a natural selection in humans following a zoonotic transfer. And also additionally, the Chinese scientist paper naming Nature in 2018 December published a paper naming Origin and Evolution of Pathogenic Coronaviruses, which warned the increasing danger of spillovers of the bad coronaviruses because of the human interference and the human activities, which brings them in a close proximity to bats. So this had made the genome sequencing of the SARS-CoV-2 to be easily mapped because of the prior research. So this had basically helped to map the genome of SARS-CoV-2 in an less amount of time. So, but basically, this article tells that they themselves, that means China, they had find themselves being blamed for the new virus. Pandemic is China's biggest crisis since Tiananmen, says academic. So this topic is a discussion with a person named Richard McGregor, who is a renowned journalist and an award-winning author with unrivaled experience reporting on the top-level politics and policies of Southeast Asia and primarily from China and Japan. To be named, his famous book called "The Party: The Secret World of China's Communist Rulers" won numerous awards. So in this discussion, he had told the China's move and responses to the COVID-19 and said that it is showing both the weakness and the strengths of its system. China, in the global financial crisis in 2008, had overcome through it with a massive stimulus package, but while comparing it with COVID-19, it is fighting on different forefronts. So certainly a cover-up at some levels had been shown up. So this had become a bureaucratic mess, fighting between the localites and the centers. So because of the lack of openness and transparency, and the endemic bureaucratic problems and the fear of offending and reporting to the center had created a major havoc which the whole world is facing now. So in terms of the Western countries, China is in the position of a worst off condition, and the US-China relations is breaking down at a rapid pace, and relations with France, Germany and Britain had strained up. So the possibilities of political decoupling is viable, but the economic decoupling of the trade or the trade decoupling is difficult as it is winded up very closely between the US and the China. Yemen separatists declare self-rule in South. This article speaks about the major civil war which had happened in 2015 and its effect. So in the year of 2011, due to the country's upliftment or uprising, the authoritarian president naming Ali Abdullah Saleh handed over the power to his deputy Abradub Mansur Hadi. So he tried the Hadi's government tried to make us Middle East poor nations happy by struggling to deal with the various problems including militant attacks, corruption, food security, and he continued to be loyal to his military officer Saleh. So fighting began in 2014 by the minority Shia Muslims named Houthi, who took grant of this situation and the weakness of the present President Hadi, and started to annex the capital Sana'a, which had been shown in the picture below, in the country of Yemen. So country's conflict dramatically escalated in March 2015 where when Saudi Arabia and 8 other most Sunni Arab states, backed by the US, UK, and France, began airstrikes against these Houthis with a declared aim of restoring Mr. Hadi's government. But parallelly, the Saudis-led coalition feared that a continued success of this Houthi would give the rival regional power and Shia's majority state, where Iran, a foothold in Yemen, Saudi Arabia's southern neighbor, is backing the Houthis with weapons and logistical support, is what Saudi Arabia says. But charge on Iran is what they deny. So here in this context, the southern separatist group announces a self-rule, but the Saudi-backed government has warned of catastrophic consequences. So the conflict between the government is one part is the UAE-backed separatist STC group and the Saudi-backed government and its ally in the Yemen's war. So this Yemen's war is still has not ended and still proliferating and had led to this conclusion, where the STC is one of the main group fighting against the Houthis, who is the minority Shia Muslim, as a part of the coalition which is led by the Saudi Arabia. So the separatist has clashed with the government's force in the past, and the STC announced an emergency in Aden and all other southern governorates, which said it takes control of Aden's port and airport and other state institutions such as central bank. Why Franklin closed 6 funds? This economic article explains why the Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund, US-based entity, had winded up its 6 debt funds, combined asset management of almost 26,000 crores. So basically, what is a debt fund? When borrowing entity, or the company which issues a debt instrument wants to raise a fund, they borrow from the investors. So they pay the interest and the principal amount as a payback to the lender on stipulated time frame. So buying a debit can be considered as lending money on loan to the issuing entity. A debt fund invests in fixed interest generating securities like the government bonds, money market instruments, government securities, treasury bills, and commercial papers. So the debt funds invest on various securities based on their credit ratings. Security credit rating signifies whether the issuer will default in disbursing the returns they promised. So basically, there are two differences, like the higher credit rating and the lower credit rating. So the higher credit rating means that the entity is more likely to pay interest and on the debt along along with the principal amount as a payback upon the maturity on a regular basis. So the converse holds good for the low credit rating entities. So coming to the point, why this company had taken this step. So this is on account of illiquid and the low rated instruments in their portfolio to prevent the value at the current levels. The value was getting eroded due to a combination of redemptions, that means external pressures, and market to market losses following the lack of liquidity, that means the liquid crunch due to the prevailing COVID-19. Some closed schemes, like the direct exposure to high yielding security across the rating spectrums. So this had created a mass havoc between the investors. The fund houses has barred both purchases and the redemptions, and the liquidation of the assets and the funds with the shortest duration would be liquidated at the earliest. So at par, the debt funds could see a spurt in redemptions, which means they are in the safe zone. So there are increasing in numbers of movement of the debt schemes into a safe zone. So the Association of the Mutual Funds in India, which is the industry body of the fund houses, which is the body, which is the apex body, which is dedicated to developing the Indian mutual fund industry on professional, healthy, and ethical lines, and also to enhance and maintain the standards in all areas with a view of protecting and promoting the interest of mutual funds and their unit holders. So the AMFI, the Association of Mutual Funds in India, the Association of the SEBI registered mutual funds in India of all registered asset management companies, was incorporated on 1995 August 22nd as a non-profit organization. So presently 42 asset management company which is registered under SEBI are its members. So this is a small background about the AMFI. So this body tells the credit risk funds which are the worst affected constituted only meager 5% of the overall debt funds. So the credit risk funds are the funds which are higher in volatility, which means higher risk but with a higher interest rate of returns. So the AMFI regulations allowed mutual fund schemes to borrow up to 20% of their assets to meet the present liquid crunch in order to relieve their pressures and redemptions, and also for the dividend payouts for their investors. And that's all for today's news analysis, and I hope this video will help you to understand the major articles and other editorial sections of this paper. And the other news articles had been converted in the form of PDF, and the link had been given in the below description. Please do provide your comments and feedback. Thank you friends, stay home and stay safe.